Welcome to another Fantasy Goodfellas video where I talk about the top 30 running back rankings for Week 8. You ready? The Fantasy Goodfellas.
Rolling on the field.
The Fantasy Goodfellas. All right, before we get started, let me remind you that these are not our rankings, but rather I am commenting on rankings by a collective group of writers. So don't put in the comments if you think these rankings suck, because they're not mine. And I know that you're going to start the running backs you like or that you have in your on your roster. And that's really it. So some players are on bye. Pay attention to that, but let's just get started. At number 1, who else? Christian McCaffrey versus the Cincinnati Bengals. What did McCaffrey do in Week 7? Well, he caught 45. He ran for 45 rushing yards, 1 TD, 3 catches for 51 yards and a TD. At number 2, you have Tony Pollard versus the Los Angeles Rams. Now, Pollard was on bye in Week 7, so we got to go back to Week 6 to see how he did. And that was kind of a subpar game. Even though he had 110 total yards, he was the 13th ranked running back. We expect Pollard to get into the end zone to be ranked so high. Number 3, Austin Eckler versus the Chicago Bears. Austin Eckler was a subpar game himself. He had 45 rushing yards. That's not cutting it. And if you want to see how he's doing on the season, we're going to look at his week-to-week rankings. And only in Week 1 was he that top-tier running back that you expected. Every other week, whether he was injured, not playing, and then when he has played, he's been below. So that's been tough for fantasy owners, as Eckler has not done anything this season. At number 4, Raheem Mostert versus the New England Patriots. You know, Mostert has just been solid all season, although they ran into a brick wall in those Philadelphia Eagles defense. But we should expect Raheem Mostert to get back on track in Week 8. At number 5, you have Alvin Kamara at the Indianapolis Colts. You know, Alvin Kamara is quietly back to Alvin Kamara himself. So let's just look at what he's done on the season once he's returned. He was the 6th. Once he returned, 6, 15, 7. So he's a starter, especially when you have 2 running back roster spots. At number 6, Breece Hall at the New York Giants. Hall was on bye, and if you go back to Week 6, he got into the end zone and had about 100 yards total. So we should expect Breece Hall to be back this week. At number 7, you have Travis Etienne at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Etienne was the 3rd ranked running back in Week 7. He did that with 2 TDs on the ground. So if he gets in the end zone, if he gets into the end zone, he does get into the end zone. Number 8, you got Kenneth Walker III versus the Cleveland Browns. I think the Cleveland Browns defense is underrated, but Kenneth Walker had 105 rushing yards and 6 receiving yards overall on the season. He's been fairly well. He's done fairly well, and we should expect him to do fairly well this week. Number 9, you got Isaiah Pacheco at the Denver Broncos. Now, Denver's defense stinks, so if there's ever a chance that Isaiah Pacheco could go off, it might be this game. At number 10, you have Jonathan Taylor versus the New Orleans Saints. You know, sometimes you don't catch all those games, but what did Taylor do? He had 75 rushing yards, 45 receiving yards, and got into the end zone on ground. That was good for 6th. At number 11, you have Josh Jacobs at the Detroit Lions. Now, Josh Jacobs is obviously not having the season he had last year, but if you look at what he's done week to week this year, he's kind of at least been your starter when you have 2 roster spots. At number 12, you have Saquon Barkley versus the New York Jets. I think the New York Jets, their secondary is a little bit better than their running defense. And Barkley had 75 rushing yards, 41 receiving yards, and a TD. I think he can kind of match that again this week. At number 13, you got Jahmyr Gibbs versus the Las Vegas Raiders. That was a little subpar game for the Detroit Lions, although Jahmyr Gibbs stood out amongst that team. He was the 5th-ranked running back all week, and then it was the passing attack that was a little weak, but Gibbs was a standout. At number 14, you have Derrick Henry versus the Atlanta Falcons. Derrick Henry, I think, was on bye, but what did he do in week 6? Well, he was the 4th-ranked running back. Hey, it's Derrick Henry. You're starting him regardless. At number 15, Alexander Mattison at the Green Bay Packers. Mattison, he didn't look too good, and I like to say if you have, but he didn't look too good, but you're starting him anyways. The player that you should look out for is Cam Akers. He's just looked a little bit brighter on that Minnesota team because that Minnesota team can throw the ball, and he's a catcher. So I look for Cam Akers more than Madison. At number 16, you got DeAndre Swift at the Washington Commanders. DeAndre Swift had 62 rushing yards, 13 receiving yards. That was good for the 27th-ranked running back. He should be fine this week. At number 17, Bijan Robinson at the Tennessee Titans. What did Robinson do? Well, that's terrible. But, Robinson has been a bright light, and you're going to have to rock with him regardless of what he's trending. But if you want to see how he's trending in yardage, he seems to be slipping, and that's not a good trend. If we go to points, he's done a little bit better on points being consistent, but it still seems to be slipping. At number 18, Joe Mixon versus the San Francisco 49ers. Joe Mixon was, let's go back to week 6. He only had 62 total yards. That's good for the 31st ranked running back. But, again, it's just one of those things that you're going to rock Mixon regardless. And he was trending up for a while. If you look at points, he, is struggling on points, but it's Joe Mixon. At number 19, Aaron Jones versus the Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Jones, over the season, let's take a look. He was the number 1 ranked running back in week 1 and really hasn't done much, whether he was injured or just not performing well. So he's one that he might not even be helping your team. He might be hurting your team more than helping. At number 20, James Cook versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. James Cook has done fairly well. He had in week 7, 56 rushing yards, 46 receiving yards, and a TD. If we look at his running chart, it's okay. But if we look at his points, that's where he gets into the end zone as a receiver, and that bodes well. At number 21, you got Dameon Pierce at the Carolina Panthers. And Dameon Pierce, let's go back to week 6. He was the 44th. Week 5, he was the 24th. And in week 4, he was the 15th. So, he's just one of those players that you're probably going to start regardless of what these rankings state. At number 22, Gus Edwards at the Arizona Cardinals. Gus Edwards was the 2nd-ranked running back in week 7. He did that with 144 total yards and a touchdown on the ground. But look at all these carries. All these running backs either might have not got carries, but they got balls thrown to them. And that's going to, that's not a good sign, though. Too many players. At number 23, Ramondre Stevenson at the Miami Dolphins. And this is going to be an interesting matchup. Stevenson looked a little bit better. He had 15 total plays that he was included on, so he might be picking up a little steam. But if we look at that team as a whole, Mac Jones, might be Mac Jones, and then you got Ezekiel Elliott as the, splitting time with. So it's not looking good for Stevenson. At 24, you got Miles Sanders versus the Houston Texans. Sanders, if you don't catch all these games, you might not know how they're performing. And Sanders, so far on the season, hasn't cracked the top 15 since week 3. So I would say that this is a stretch for Miles Sanders. At number 25, Rachaad White at the Buffalo Bills. Rachaad White, he's doing it in the air, and he is a good player. So that's for 99 yards. And what has White done all season? I like to look at these ranks. He was 40, 12, 43, 21st, 41, 18. And that's how it looks for the whole season. At 26, you got Darrell Henderson Jr. at the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know how long Henderson could be in the lineup. The problem is I've already heard that he was back on the practice squad, even though he was the 14th ranked running back in week 7. That's not a good sign, so please pay attention to Henderson for this week. At number 27, Amari DeMarcado versus the Baltimore Ravens. He was your 26th ranked running back, 4.5 yards a carry. He had 4 catches for 17 yards. Looks like he was included in that passing attack. At number 28, Javonte Williams versus the Kansas City Chiefs. What did Javonte Williams do in week 7? He caught 82. No, he ran for 82 rushing yards. He had 14 receiving yards. That was good for 19th. And again, Javonte Williams, you're going to be, if you have him in your lineup, he's a starter. At number 29, you got Kareem Hunt at the Seattle Seahawks. Kareem Hunt got into the end zone, 2 TDs, 31 rushing yards, and that's what you expect for Kareem Hunt. And please pay attention to Jerome Ford's injury, and Ford had 74 yards and a rushing touchdown. So if you look at these predictions, they're not predicting Ford to be starting. So pay attention to my injury report as well. At number 30, Najee Harris versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Is Najee Harris picking up? Well, that's been his trends. And let's go to points to kind of see how he's trending. And it is an upward curve as that Pittsburgh Steelers offense seems to be picking up speed. I like Harris this week. That is going to do it for this week's running back rankings. Don't forget, I'm just commenting on the rankings. Please put in your thoughts in the comment section, and we'll try to answer them. All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and good luck this week. Those fantasy good fellas.
Rolling on the field.
Those fantasy good fellas.